All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry for our tardiness, but we are here and we are live. Happy New Year, everyone. For
Yes,
those who
Happy
are
New
joining
Year.
us, we are back in action. For those who don't know, my name is Candace Miles, but I go by Coach C. I'm the founder and CEO of No Gap Consulting, where I am empowering the next generation of Black women stepping into leadership for the very first time with cultural, relatable resources and tools they need to embrace their identity as they step into leadership for the first time. But as y'all already know, I'm not here by myself. My beautiful co-host here, I will kick it over to you for you to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. It's glad to definitely be back live with everyone. My name is Cynthia Haley. I am the Chief Energy Officer or CEO of Transition to Infinite Possibilities, where I specialize in uh, helping corporate professionals elevate their energies to elevate their careers, whether that is navigating corporate spaces or leadership opportunities, or simply just exploring the next career opportunity for yourself. That's where I come in as a certified professional coach. And we're certainly glad to be back in 2025 to light the torch.
Yes, and so if this is your first time joining us, Lighting the Torch Fireside Chat is where we are lighting each other's torch from generation to generation, passing on our wisdom, passing on our tips, whether you are in front or you're behind, but essentially making sure that we are lighting each other's torch, regardless of where we're at any stage in our life. Cynthia, let's
Yeah,
you know, I'm not gonna be like it's our month, but it is Black History
it
Month.
is. It
I
is. It
am
is.
excited about this because it is something that we both identify with, being in leadership, and
Mhm.
it is Black History Month. So why don't you let them know what we're talking about today?
Yes, let's definitely pay homage to our culture
Mhm.
as it is Black History Month, and we do want to honor that. So, we have a really good topic today, and I think that any person can relate to it. But as we get through this topic, we're definitely going to weave in things more specific to Black leaders or Black in corporate spaces. And so, as you can see, the topic for today is resilience isn't optional. Lead with purpose through life's toughest moments. So, what do we mean by that? When we think about the topic in itself, most of us, and when I say us, meaning Blacks in corporate spaces, can definitely relate to having to be resilient, right? Navigating the corporate journey. And especially when you're in a leadership role, you're much more cognizant of it and having to lead with purpose so that you don't get distracted and off course because of those tough moments. Now, while we focus a lot on leadership, I do want to say that the conversation can be open to anyone in any role, in any capacity. Whether you have the title of leader or not, you're oftentimes leading without the title, right? Or being put in certain positions in your career where you're having to step up and take the lead. So I think this is going to be a really good conversation. And hopefully, you get some takeaways from this that you can apply and you might even relate to it. And if you
Yeah.
do, put a comment in the chat. Let us know what resonates for you, or even share your own experience with us. So, just to get us started, let's just simply talk about the power of resilience in leadership. And what I mean by that is just thinking about how Black leaders have historically have to go through a lot of barriers or break through a lot of barriers, using resilience as a key leadership skill, right? Oftentimes, when they think about leadership skills, resilience is not high on the list, but
Mhm.
it's something that we definitely have to come to the table with. Um, and let's talk about, how we looked up to some of those leaders or have experienced Black leaders in spaces that have had to be resilient, including ourselves, right?
Mhm.
um, and then how today's leaders can embody that. What's that experience like, and what tips they can kind of take away from it. And I'll share my own experience, and I'm sure you can share yours, Candace. But I've been in leadership roles, gosh, since 2007, I believe. And it has definitely been a journey. And there have been a lot of times I'm going to say something that may sound cliche, but it's real. And a lot of people can resonate with this. Being the only one in the room that looks like you, right? Where you're sitting at the table in a leadership meeting and you're the only one, right? And in my case, the time that I'm reflecting on is being the only woman and being the only Black in the room. And so there's a lot of challenges in those spaces because oftentimes there are these unconscious biases that show up, right? We don't want to talk about that these days, but we have to talk about it. There are unconscious biases that show up that put you in a position to be resilient. Mm-hmm. And I'll share this quick little example where I can remember having to go into a meeting to prepare for a client coming in and being told, you can come in because we need your knowledge and your information, but don't speak. So imagine that experience, right? Where I have the knowledge, I have the experience, I am qualified to be in the room, but just don't speak. And in that moment, that is where resiliency does kick in. Mm-hmm. Because you have to be strong, you have to show up, you have to conquer, you have to break through that barrier without breaking down. And, but that moment, it still taught me a lot, right? One, it allows you to see what you're up against so you know how to move. And you just continue to persevere. You have being mindful of how it affects you mentally, mm-hmm. so that you don't give up. And that was my journey. I'm like, I'm not going to give up just because that's your take, that's your unconscious bias. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to stop showing up as myself. I'm not going to stop being the fearless leader that I am because you're unable to see that and respect it and value it. So that's my resiliency in leadership. Candace, I know you got a story or two that you can speak on with this one.
No, I think you hit something right on the head when you said that resilience is a skill. A lot of times, mm-hmm. people think it's just a personality trait, particularly when it comes to people of color, especially when it comes to being a Black woman in corporate. It really is a skill, because a lot of people like to say, "Oh, you're so strong," like it's a compliment. No, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times I've heard that about me being so strong, but it's the strength. It's the strength that just isn't about the goal or anything like that. There's some strategy when it comes to being resilient, because even in that moment, just to touch on that just a little bit, even in that moment with you being told to be quiet in the room, you had to start kicking in some strategic thinking. Yeah. How was I going to still sit here and not become bitter in this moment, but bounce back from this moment? Mm-hmm. And that's a skill. That is a skill that, like any other skill, mm-hmm. it can be built, and it's mm-hmm. built through. For me, I feel like that's because a lot of times we see that skill of resilience, particularly in our culture, is because we're put into those situations that we have to bounce back, not just now. Generationally in our lineage, we've had to bounce back. Mm-hmm. For me, I remember when I first got into leadership, and we kind of had to duke it out. And it was only one. It was a new position they were creating. It was a lead position is what it was for my first step into leadership. And so it was me, and it was this other girl who did not look like me. And I remember, let's just say in California, it is legal now, but back then it wasn't. And they used to come in there very under the influence. And so it was kind of yeah. And it was kind of a slap in the face to even think that you would have me go up against this person when you know already, just the way that I presented myself, just the way that I carried myself, that I was the better candidate out of the two. And so we ended up having to go through several rounds that I didn't really understand while I was going through this. But in the end result, it taught me not to give up on something, which is what started me getting into leadership in the first place.
Yeah.
And so having to, sometimes those, like you said earlier, those unconscious bias, thinking like, you know, and the company was a startup. So thinking like, okay, we want to keep this certain image, but you have someone that automatically is the better candidate, but you're having them go through this whole process for what?
That's another topic that I don't even want to get into right now. But you did earn it. And we'll leave it as that.
We'll leave it as that. That's a little mic drop. And
but you know, in thinking about resiliency too, I think about the Black male in
yes.
corporate America also. I can remember a story of a coworker who once felt like he had to constantly be jovial, right? Or make light of situations just to make other people comfortable with him because of his build, his stature, and in these spaces where he would be the only Black male. And, you know, I'm segueing into another point of just how you have to lead with authenticity in unwelcome spaces. And how can you still be yourself in unwelcome spaces, right? That's that skill of being resilient. You know what you're walking into. You know that you might have to code switch. You know that you're going to have to be like a chameleon and adapt into these environments. And this is something, you know, speaking with Black male colleagues over the years, that they definitely have had the challenge of, you know, going in these spaces, and definitely in my personal experience, you know, knowing, hey, I'm not welcome in this room, but I still have to show up and be myself. And, you know, oftentimes in Black History Month, I can remember speaking on panels and we talk about code switching.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and for those that don't know what code switching is, it's having to be mindful of your word usage and show up in a way that our corporate partners can respond to and feel comfortable in. And so we have
you want to be political. I want to be like, code switching mean this, going on and off, on and off. What do you mean?
Yes, it's one of those moments, you know, where my daughter would come in and say, "Why are you talking like that?" Yeah, like that's not how you talk. But yeah, you know, it happens a lot. And while we are uncomfortable, we're making others comfortable. And you know, let's talk about it. You know, why is it, and how do we overcome it?
You know, I feel like in essence to what you were just talking about, like thinking about the whole resilience, I think sometimes we also think about suffering and silence. And in no case, like what you're talking about with that Black male or that Black woman walking into the room and feeling like, oh, I have to be authentic or I have to code switch. Sometimes I think we have to be a little bit more strategic when it comes to having control, transparency. That means everybody don't need to know your story. Everyone that doesn't mean you can't be authentic. That doesn't mean you can't be transparent with them, but you have to strategically think about, how do I build this connection with this person on this team or with this person in this meeting without being too vulnerable to the wrong people. Because I've seen that in so many cases where I've been vulnerable and it's been taken and weaponized towards me. Where now I've talked about it before. Those who have heard it, like I found myself in a investigation at work for doing just that with my team. You know?
Yeah, definitely can relate. I think it comes with a little bit of discernment. Being more of a active and effective listener. Right. You know, sometimes we're quick to walk in spaces and just start talking because to be the loudest one in the room or to make sure people know that we are supposed to be here. I'm smart enough to be in this room, so I'm going to start talking and make sure you know that I'm smart enough to be in this room. And sometimes you need to just sit back and listen, watch, observe, pay attention to the people in the room, and speak when it's meant to be more impactful, right?
Yeah.
Versus speaking to just speak. And then there's learning how and who to trust. And I say trust very loosely in a sense, right? Because we're not just willingly trusting everyone, right? Yeah. But there's a degree of trust in corporate spaces that you start to build. As a leader, and because you want to be trusted as a leader. But to not deviate too far from the point, it's just being consciously aware of the environments that you're in, being consciously aware of the people around you, and just sit back and watch sometimes.
You saying that makes me think about a quote from Nelson Mandela, because he was one of the sought out, just worldwide, everyone felt like he was a great leader. And one of the things I remember listening to one of his interviews, and someone was asking him, why is he considered a great leader? And he says, great leaders listen, they listen and they speak last. And that they don't necessarily always have to speak in order to lead. Because we've seen plenty of times where he's just been there and he's just been sitting.
Yes.
And, and we're like, well, what is he doing? He's listening. He's doing exactly what he said he's doing, which is why that he can provide that sound, whatever that solution or that thought to people whenever he does speak, why it was so very profound, because he did the one thing that a lot of us don't do, regardless of what culture you're in, is listen before speaking. And like you said, like we want to show up and show that, hey, we deserve to be in this room. Well, let me show you. Well, no, that means that you need to take a step in the mirror and look and show that person why you deserve to be in the room. Because if you are, so look, I'm all on my intentional, that's like my top. If you are comfortable with who you are, you'll know that I don't need to come in this room and to speak all the time or to prove to anyone, because I know who I am. And the reason why I'm in here is because I know who I am and they know who I am, regardless if they ask me the question is. So I like all your points, and I would even throw in there, and it probably aligns to what you just said, but self-awareness, that's also a part of it. What are you looking at that people necessarily overlook? I can hear you barking, but what are you saying behind that bark?
Yes.
And
when we think about unwelcoming spaces, it's one of those things too. We have to be conscious of our mindset going in, right? Is it unwelcoming, or do we think it's unwelcoming? Because the way that we view the situation can affect how we show up in the situation. And so shift the mindset. It doesn't have to be an unwelcoming space. It could be the space where you truly belong. And so you walk in there authentically you, with the skills that you have, with the expertise that you have, with the knowledge that you have, to show up as the best corporate professional leader you know to be, and you
Yeah.
deserve to be in the space.
Yeah. And ask yourself, what skill is this moment forcing me to develop?
Mm-hmm.
Because that
Mm-hmm.
shift in the mindset that you're talking about, it'll go from why me to what is this preparing me for?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You know, we've had you speak on Nelson Mandela, and it makes me think of, you know, just other leaders, because a part of Black history, you know, we often honor the past and even reflect on the current state, right? Where we have leaders in place right now. I think about Tashonda uh, at TIAA, right? Tashonda Duckett, um, Shonda Brown. I probably messed that up. With TIAA, right? She is one of the few Black women leading as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, right? And imagine the barriers and the breakthroughs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about other Black leaders, Black executives in the C-suite spaces. Um, you have Marvin Ellison of Lowe's. You know, the journeys are not the sparkle and glisten and gold that we see.
Mm-mm.
The journey has took them through a lot, right? Having to navigate spaces that were sometimes very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
um, in showing up as the only one in those spaces. But I have to lean in and think, one, it comes from what I know of the two people, very faith based, right? So you have to have a foundation. You have to
You're
be
right.
rooted and grounded, right? You have to know your values and let that guide you through those tough moments. Because without it, that makes it even harder.
Mm-hmm.
So always check in with yourself and, you know, what is that spiritual guidance that's taking you through these spaces? No matter what you believe, you need a foundation. You need
Yes.
to know what your values are to help you navigate these tough moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, we always look back, but sometimes looking back, we can look at their history since they've been in there.
Mm-hmm.
If we want
Mm-hmm.
to go back and look a little bit further, we can look back there. But regardless, you can identify, I would say pick a leader, whatever your style is, whoever you are, put in there that, you know what, I'm a visionary. I see things big picture. This is what I do. Grab that. We all love Chat GPT and Claude AI. We heard last month when we had our guest speaker waited here. Like, put it in Chat GPT and say, hey, what who is a Black leader from the past, present, or future who was a visionary? And then listen, and it will list out, hey, you have XYZ leaders. Okay, whichever person that you resonate with, let me take this person. Can you now do another prompt and say, tell me their journey of how they became who they are today? And it's going to pull that information for you. So now, because sometimes we always feel that we actually put ourselves in a box. We have so many resources that I didn't have when I got into leadership, you didn't have when you get into leadership, that you
Mm-hmm.
have readily available at your fingertips to guide you, because it's going to give you step by step, okay, this is what you need to do. Hey, put a plan together of how I can become like this, or even my version of this person. But
Right.
using your resources will help you understand, okay, the answers are already there. There are people that
Right.
have already done it for a reason. We just got to go and grab that information.
Yes, I'm glad you pulled that in. I oftentimes get questions around how to pull in Chat GPT, right, for this career journey, and kind of using the example that you shared. The next layer is really now identify the skills that
Yes.
this person used in their career journey to become a visionary. They didn't start out, they may
No.
not have started out as a visionary, but they learned and grew over time and became a visionary. and became successful. What were those skills? How did they hone in on those skills? In my current role as X, what can I do to build upon those skills?
Yep.
And so though that's the type of prompt that you can feed ChatGPT to help you build out your own professional development plan.
Yeah.
Because I know it's that
Because,
time of year.
oh, we know.
We know
And
it's
then you
that
can
time
put
of
it
year.
in smart. You can use the
Yeah.
smart goal or whatever one that you use to put it there. Now take this and make it into a goal. But essentially,
Absolutely.
resilience. Yeah, that's what we're talking. That's what we're talking about here when it comes to, like Cynthia said, understanding your purpose. You're in that. Since we are talking about leadership, you're in that position for a reason. And if you're an aspiring to be a leader, you can still do this regardless of where you're at in your career or where you're trying to navigate. You can use these same chat prompts that we both just stated and make and customize it to where you're at and where you're trying to go.
Yeah, definitely. I know we usually wrap up our sessions with how we want to light the torch for each other and the next generation and just anyone who's listening. You know, as you're kind of going through this, it just hit me just now. A song. I'm not gonna sing, but
I was gonna say we
no, that's not happening. No, that's not happening. But I am an overcomer. Just kind of hit me right, and thinking about being resilient or feeling the need to be resilient. Just know that you are an overcomer. And resilience, while it is a skill, sometimes the fight, we don't want to always have to feel like we have to fight or always feel like we have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing to the point now I have to be resilient. While it may still be there, just know that you're an overcomer and that this moment, this tough moment may be showing up right now, but you can overcome it because one, culturally, we're not meant to break. We're not built to break. And so take everything in you that you know about the culture, about who you are as a Black professional, and make that step to overcome. Don't let the tough moment hold you back from your potential. As it says in the name of my company, use this to transition to infinite possibilities. The sky is the limit. Just keep having that conscious awareness of your environment, and you can overcome these tough moments. That's my torch that I'm lighting for you, for you, for you, and everyone and anyone listening.
So I swear we are on the same accord. I actually wrote mine down because I was like, "Ooh, this is good. I don't want to forget it." So to light the torch, what I wrote here is resilience isn't optional, but struggle isn't a requirement for success either. The goal isn't just to survive the tough moments, is to lead through them with purpose, strategy, and a whole lot of self-respect.
Absolutely.
So the only thing that I have to say after that is like, what are you going to do this week? Well, we're already in Thursday. You could think about next week, but you know what? The week starts whenever you want it to start. So if you want to start Friday,
absolutely,
it can start tomorrow. But what are you going to do to invest in your own resilience? What is that current challenge that you're about to face right now? Like you said, reviews are about to start coming up, goals are being set right now. What goal are you going that's going to stretch you and build that skill of resilience that next year you will thank yourself for doing it?
Yes. And then maybe you won't even feel the need to have to be so resilient all the time.
No.
Right? Right? Like, oh, but it happens. And the most important part here is just get that skill and believe in yourself. Take Candace's nugget there of looking in the mirror, having that self awareness, and go into 2025 knocking it out the park. There's nothing that you can't overcome in 2025. All right. So, Candace, we will be doing this again in another 2 weeks because we are back for the year and we want to make sure you join us. So, leave us a comment, leave a note in the chat, and we hope to see you the next go around. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a wonderful and amazing evening.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.